It all started on a Tuesday, the kind of gray, rainy afternoon that makes the world feel small and quiet. I was 12, and my universe was pretty much defined by the boundaries of my bike route, the latest video game releases, and the oppressive boredom that only a summer downpour can bring. Mom Evelyn was downstairs, lost in her own world of fabric swatches and fashion magazines, a world that had become her fortress since Dad died. That left me with nothing but the rhythmic drumming of rain on the roof and a restless energy buzzing under my skin. My mission was simple: find Dad's old console. I had this vague, golden-hued memory of him hooking up a clunky gray box to the TV in the den, of blocky characters and tinny electronic music. I figured it had to be in the attic, the final frontier of our suburban two-story house, a place of dusty relics and forgotten things. The pull-down ladder in the hallway ceiling groaned in protest as I lowered it, releasing a faint scent of cedar and old paper. I switched on the bare bulb that hung from a rafter, casting a weak, yellowy glow over a landscape of cardboard boxes and ghost-like shapes draped in white sheets. It was like a graveyard of our family's past lives. There were boxes labeled Christmas ornaments, college textbooks, and baby clothes. Alex. I ignored them all, my eyes scanning for anything that looked remotely electronic. After about 10 minutes of fruitless searching, my fingers, gray with dust, brushed against a box tucked away in a corner, half hidden behind an old rocking horse. It wasn't a standard brown cardboard box, it was a pale pink hat box, the kind you see in old movies, with a faded satin ribbon tied around it. And on the lid, in my mom's elegant, looping cursive, were the words, "My little princess." A jolt of something curiosity, maybe a little bit of trespasser's guilt shot through me. It was so out of place. My mom wasn't the sentimental type. Not really. Practical. Driven. Yes. But a pink hat box, I figured it must have been hers from when she was a kid. I lifted the lid, expecting to find old dolls or maybe a diary. What I found stopped my breath. It was a collection of photographs. The top one showed a toddler, maybe 2 or 3 years old, sitting on a patch of bright green grass. The kid had a halo of soft, curly brown hair, my hair tied up with little pink ribbons. They were wearing a frilly, sunshine yellow sundress with a white lace collar. The toddler was smiling, a wide, gummy grin, and in their eyes, I saw a familiar glint of mischief, my glint. My heart started to pound, a frantic, trapped bird rhythm against my ribs. I shuffled through the other photos, the same child in different dresses, a blue one with puffy sleeves at a birthday party, a white, lacy one, looking like a tiny angel, being held in my mom's arms. In every picture, Mom was beaming, her face radiating a kind of pure, unadulterated joy I hadn't seen in years. In one photo, the toddler was holding a doll, their little painted nails matching the pale pink polish on their toenails, which peeked out of tiny white sandals. It was me. There was no denying it. The shape of my eyes, the curve of my smile, the little mole just above my lip. It was me, Alex, dressed up like a little girl. My mind felt like it was short-circuiting. This made no sense. My dad, he was a man's man, football on Sundays, grilling in the backyard, teaching me how to throw a baseball until my arm ached. He would never, ever have allowed this. He barely tolerated Mom's more artistic design choices for the house, always grumbling about throw pillows and scented candles. As I fumbled to put the pictures back, my fingers brushed against a folded piece of paper at the bottom of the box. It was a note, written on the same pale pink stationery, Mom's handwriting again. "One day, my dream will come true again." The words hit me like a physical blow, a cold dread, thick and suffocating, washed over me. What dream? What did it mean? My world, the one built on video games and bike rides and the solid, unwavering memory of my father, suddenly felt like it was made of glass and 1,000 tiny cracks were spreading across its surface. I must have sat there for an hour, the rain hammering on the roof, just staring at that box. The initial shock gave way to a churning sea of confusion and a hot, prickly feeling of shame. Why would she do this? Why would she keep it a secret? That evening, the house was filled with the smell of roasted chicken, Mom's attempt at a comforting family dinner for two. I picked at my food, my stomach in knots. The mashed potatoes tasted like cardboard. "You're quiet tonight, honey," she said, her voice gentle. She looked tired, the lines around her eyes deeper than usual. I pushed my plate away. I was in the attic today. Her hand, which was halfway to her wine glass, froze. A flicker of something I couldn't identify. Fear, panic crossed her face before being replaced by a carefully neutral expression. "Oh, looking for something." "The old Nintendo," I said, my voice coming out harsher than I intended. "But I found something else." I watched her, my heart hammering. She knew, of course. She knew. She just set her fork down slowly, her knuckles white. "What did you find, Alex?" "A pink box," I said, my voice cracking. "A box full of pictures. Of me. In dresses." The silence that followed was deafening. The only sounds were the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall and the faint sizzle from the oven. Then a single tear traced a path down her cheek. Then another. She didn't sob. She just sat there as silent tears streamed down her face, her carefully constructed composure crumbling. "Oh, Alex," she whispered, her voice thick with a sorrow so deep it seemed to suck the air out of the room. "I never wanted you to find it like that." She finally broke, burying her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. I just sat there, frozen, a 12-year-old boy watching his mother fall apart, knowing he was the cause. After a few minutes, she took a shuddering breath and looked at me, her eyes red and pleading. "Before you were born," she began, her voice barely a whisper, "all I ever wanted was a daughter. It was this intense, deep-seated yearning. I dreamed of dressing her up, of braiding her hair, of sharing all the beautiful, feminine things in the world with her." She looked away, toward the window where the rainy darkness pressed against the glass. "Your father, he was a good man. Alex, he loved you so much, but he was very traditional. He wanted a son, an heir, someone to carry on the family name, to play sports with. When we found out I was having a boy, I was happy. Of course I was, because you were a part of him, a part of us. But a little piece of my heart just broke." She told me everything then, how when I was a toddler, with my fine hair and big eyes, people often mistook me for a little girl, and how each time it happened, it gave her a secret, guilty thrill. She confessed to buying my clothes in the girls' section, choosing soft pastels and androgynous styles that could pass either way. She told me about her dream, the one from the note, a dream of having a daughter, a dream she tried to live out, just for a little while, through me. "He found out," she said, her voice hollow. "A neighbor made a comment about our lovely little girl. He was furious. He called it unnatural, perverted. He made me throw everything away, the dresses, the ribbons, the dolls. I told him I did, but I couldn't. I packed it all away in that box. It was all I had left of my dream." She reached across the table and took my hand. Her skin was cold. "Losing your father, it was the worst pain I've ever felt, but it set me free. In a way, free from his expectations. And that dream, the one I buried for so long, it started to whisper to me again." I stared at her, my mind reeling. My whole life, my identity as Alex, son of a man's man, felt like a lie. I was a stand-in, a replacement for a daughter she never had. The unease that had been simmering in my gut all afternoon curdled into a cold, hard knot of fear. I pulled my hand away from hers. I didn't know what to say, what to think. All I knew was that something fundamental had shifted. The foundation of my world had cracked open, and I was terrified of what was about to crawl out. To really understand how deep this went, you have to go back further, back to before I could even form the memories myself, back to when my world was a fuzzy, sensory blur. Mom's stories, pieced together with the faded evidence from that pink hat box, painted a picture of a time when the lines were not just blurred, but completely erased. It started subtly, as a toddler. I was apparently one of those cherubic-looking kids with big brown eyes and a cloud of fine, curly hair that resisted any attempt to be tamed into a boy's cut. Mom told me that strangers in the grocery store or at the park would constantly coo, "Oh, your daughter is just precious." At first, she would correct them, a polite but firm. "He's a boy, actually." But then she noticed the pang of disappointment she felt each time she said it. The words tasted like a lie, even though they were the truth. So she stopped. She would just smile and say, "Thank you," basking in the momentary glow of their mistake. That small deception opened a door. She started buying my clothes from the girls' department. Nothing too obvious at first. Soft, pastel-colored onesies instead of the primary colored ones with trucks on them. Little corduroy overalls in lavender and mint green. Tiny sneakers that had a little sparkle in the laces. She kept my hair longish, brushing it out every morning until it formed a soft halo around my face. She even bought me gender-neutral toys, which in her mind meant a dollhouse and a play kitchen to go alongside the wooden blocks and toy cars Dad bought. It was a secret world she built for us, one that existed in the quiet hours of the day when Dad was at work. The pivotal moment, the one that escalated from passive deception to active creation, happened when I was 4. She called it our special pretend day. I have a single, vivid flash of a memory from that afternoon, like a scene from a dream that feels more real than reality. The rest has been filled in by her tearful confession at the dinner table all those years later. It began with a bath. She filled the tub with mountains of bubbles that smelled overwhelmingly of lavender. The scent was calming, hypnotic. The warm water lapped at my small body, making me feel weightless and relaxed. She washed my hair with a shampoo that smelled like strawberries, her fingers gently massaging my scalp. I remember the sensation of the fluffy, oversized towel she wrapped me in afterward. It was pale yellow and felt like being hugged by a cloud. This was where things veered from our normal routine. Instead of my usual cotton briefs with cartoon characters on them, she pulled out a pair of silky, white panties. The fabric was cool and slippery against my skin, a completely foreign sensation. They hugged my bottom in a way my briefs never did, and I remember squirming a little, a mix of confusion and ticklish delight. Then came the dress. It was the pink sundress from one of the photos, with a delicate lace trim around the collar and hem, as she slipped it over my head. The soft cotton swished against my bare legs. It felt freeing. There was no waistband digging into my belly, no restrictive denim. When I spun around, the skirt flared out, and I giggled at the dizzying sensation of fabric and air. The final touches were the most intimate. She sat me down on the fluffy bath mat and carefully combed my damp hair, parting it into 2 sections. The gentle tug on my scalp as she wove my curls into 2 pigtails was oddly soothing. She secured them with bright pink ribbons that bounced against my cheeks when I moved my head. Then she produced a small, sparkly tube, cherry lip gloss. She dabbed a tiny amount onto my lips, and the sticky, sweet taste made me giggle again. "For a pretty smile," she whispered, her voice soft and full of an emotion I was too young to understand. Looking back, I can see the inner conflict brewing even then. I felt special, lavished with a kind of gentle, detailed attention I wasn't used to. I was the center of my mother's universe in that moment. But there was also a tiny, nagging voice in the back of my 4-year-old mind, a whisper of my father's gruff pronouncements that boys don't play with dolls and pink is for girls. I sensed this was a secret, something Dad wouldn't approve of. The specialness was tinged with the thrill of the forbidden. The culmination of this pretend day was a trip to a local photo studio. I remember the bright, flashing lights and the photographer, a woman with kind eyes who kept calling me sweetheart and little lady. She posed me against a backdrop of painted clouds, handing me a wicker basket full of flowers. "What a beautiful little girl you have," the photographer said to my mom. And my mom, standing just out of frame, had that smile on her face, the one from the pictures, a smile of pure, unadulterated triumph. Her dream, for that one afternoon, was real. She had a daughter. The fantasy came crashing down a week later. A neighbor, Mrs. Henderson from across the street, saw my mom getting the mail. "I saw the photos from your little studio session on Facebook. Evelyn," she chirped, "your daughter is simply adorable. She has your eyes." That night, the shouting started. I was in my room trying to make my plastic dinosaurs fight, but the noise from downstairs was too loud. I couldn't make out all the words, just Dad's voice, a low, angry rumble that vibrated through the floorboards. I heard phrases like, "What were you thinking?" and "making a fool out of me." And the one that stuck with me, spat out with pure venom, "I will not have my son turned into some kind of sissy." I crept to the top of the stairs and peeked through the banisters. Dad was pacing, his face red. Mom was crying, pleading with him. "It was just a game, Robert. It was harmless." "Harmless," he roared. "The whole neighborhood thinks I have a daughter. What happens when he goes to school? Do you want him to be beaten up? Do you want him to be a freak?" That was the end of it. The next day, my longish hair was shorn into a brutally short buzz cut. The pastel clothes vanished from my drawers, replaced by a stark wardrobe of navy blue, gray, and red. The dollhouse disappeared from the playroom. The pretend days were never spoken of again. Evelyn buried her fantasy deep inside, locking it away in that pink hat box. The secret was kept, the shame was planted, and for the next 8 years, I did everything I could to be the son my father wanted. 8 years is a long time. It's long enough to bury a memory so deep you almost convince yourself it never happened. After Dad's funeral, life was a blur of casseroles from neighbors and hushed. Sympathetic whispers. Mom and I were adrift in a sea of grief, clinging to each other like a two-person life raft. She was devastated, but beneath the sorrow, there was a core of steel I'd never seen before. She had to survive. We had to survive. That's when she threw herself into her work. Before, fashion had been a hobby, a passion she indulged in by reading magazines and giving advice to her friends. Now, it became her lifeline. She enrolled in an online course and got certified as a freelance fashion stylist, specializing in women's transformations. Our living room became her studio, filled with clothing racks, mood boards, and mannequin heads with half-finished makeup applications that stared at me with unnervingly blank eyes. Her first clients were friends, women from her book club or the neighborhood who wanted a new look for a special occasion. I would hear them in the living room, their laughter and excited chatter drifting up to my room. Mom had a gift. She could see the potential in people, the confidence hiding behind a frumpy sweater or a bad haircut. One afternoon, I came home from school to find her looking stressed, staring intently at a mannequin. "It's not working," she sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I can't get a feel for how the fabric drapes on a real person. This plastic thing is useless." Her eyes landed on me. A strange look crossed her face, a mix of desperation and a glimmer of an old, forgotten idea. "Alex, honey," she said, her voice a little too casual, "could you do me a huge favor? I just need to see how this blouse hangs. Just for 5 minutes. It would help Mom out so much." My stomach clenched. A blouse, Mom. That's a girl's shirt. "It's just fabric, sweetie," she coaxed, her voice soft and persuasive. "It's for my job, for us, to help me get on my feet." Framing it as helping Mom survive was a masterstroke. How could I say no? The weight of our shared grief, of our precarious new reality, was a burden I felt compelled to help carry. With a heavy sigh and a feeling of deep reluctance, I agreed. The first session was agonizingly awkward. She just had me slip the silk blouse on over my t-shirt. The fabric was cool and smooth against my arms, a sensation so different from the rough cotton I was used to. It felt weirdly nice, a feeling I immediately pushed away with a hot flush of embarrassment. She circled me, her eyes narrowed with professional focus, pinning the fabric here, letting it out there. I stood stiffly, my arms clamped to my sides, feeling like a complete idiot. But it helped her. The next client she styled with a similar blouse was a huge success. So the requests kept coming. "Just try on these trousers. I need to check the inseam. Let me just see how this scarf looks with your skin tone." Each time, she framed it as a necessity for her burgeoning career. Then the session started to evolve. "You know," she said one day, studying my face with that same intense focus, "so much of a successful look is in the face, the canvas. Your skin is good, but a little uneven. And your eyebrows, they could use some shaping." Before I could protest, she was leading me to the brightly lit vanity she'd set up. The first step was skincare. She smoothed a cool, fragrant cream onto my face, her fingers gentle but firm as she massaged it into my skin. The tingling sensation was strange, like my pores were waking up. Then came the tweezers. "This might sting a little," she warned. A little was an understatement. Each pluck of a stray eyebrow hair was a sharp, biting pinch that made my eyes water. It was a weird mix of pain and a strange, raw vulnerability. I was sitting there, letting my mom inflict tiny, precise moments of pain on my face, and the only thing I could do was flinch and bear it. When she was done, she handed me a mirror. My brows were cleaner, more defined. They framed my eyes in a way they hadn't before. It was a subtle change, but it made my face look different, softer. The first time she applied makeup, my heart pounded with a familiar, primal sense of this is wrong. She started with a lightweight foundation, dabbing it on with a sponge. The cool liquid felt like a mask being painted on, erasing the blotchiness and teenage imperfections, leaving a smooth, even surface. She showed me the result in the mirror. My skin looked like porcelain, flawless and glowing. The reflection was me, but a polished, perfected version of me. I resisted. Of course, I complained. I made excuses. But every time, she'd give me this look, the one that reminded me of how fragile she was, how much she was depending on me, and I'd relent. Over the weeks, something strange began to happen. The routine, which started as a chore I dreaded, slowly became a ritual. It was a time when I had her complete, undivided attention, just like on that pretend day all those years ago. The embarrassment didn't vanish, but it was joined by a new insidious feeling anticipation. I started to look forward to seeing the pretty reflection in the mirror. I found myself noticing the subtle changes, the way a little concealer under my eyes made me look more awake, the way a bit of tinted balm made my lips look fuller. I hated myself for it. I would catch a glimpse of that softer, more refined face and feel a flicker of pleasure, which was immediately doused by a tidal wave of guilt and self-loathing. What would my dad think? What would the guys at school say? This was a betrayal of everything I was supposed to be. I was Alex, the son of Robert. I played basketball. I got dirt under my fingernails. I wasn't this canvas, this pretty thing in the mirror, but no matter how hard I tried to suppress it, a part of me was fascinated. A part of me liked what I saw. The turning point came on a Saturday in late October. It was a huge day for Mom. It was the day she would receive her final certification, the culmination of months of hard work and sleepless nights. She had a virtual ceremony in the afternoon, followed by a small celebratory dinner with a few of her clients and friends. She was a nervous wreck all morning, flitting around the house, tidying things that were already tidy. I wanted to do something special for her, to show her how proud I was. A greeting card or a clumsy attempt at breakfast in bed felt inadequate. She had poured everything into this new career, and in her own strange way, I had been a part of it. As I watched her anxiously straighten a picture frame for the 10th time, an idea sparked in my mind. It was a wild, terrifying, and exhilarating idea. An idea that felt both like a betrayal of my old self and a profound gesture of love for her. I waited until she went upstairs to get ready for her ceremony. My heart was thumping against my ribs like a drum solo. "You're crazy," I muttered to myself, but my feet were already carrying me toward her bedroom, toward the walk-in closet that was her inner sanctum. The closet smelled of her perfume, a mix of vanilla and something floral. It was an overwhelmingly feminine space, lined with shoes I couldn't walk in and dresses in every color imaginable. I felt like an intruder, a spy in the enemy camp, but my purpose was clear. First, I went to the bathroom. My eyes landed on her razor and the can of scented shaving cream. My arms were starting to get that dark. Teenage fuzz, on a crazy impulse. I lathered them up. The foam was pink and smelled like raspberries. The sensation of the cool razor gliding over my skin was surreal. I'd seen Dad shave his face 1,000 times, but this was different. It was meticulous, careful. When I rinsed the foam away, my arms were smooth, almost glossy. I instinctively reached for her aftershave lotion, a creamy, scented moisturizer, and rubbed it in. The smoothness was electrifying. Every nerve ending felt heightened, and the slightest breeze from the air vent gave me goosebumps. Back in the closet, my hands trembling slightly, I pulled out a pair of thigh-high stockings. They were sheer, almost black, and felt impossibly delicate. Getting them on was a clumsy struggle, but as I rolled the second one up my newly smooth leg, the sensation was incredible. It was like a second skin, a gentle, constant pressure that made me intensely aware of my own body. of the shape of my calves and thighs. I found a simple pleated black skirt. Stepping into it and zipping it up felt monumental. It swayed and moved with me, the fabric brushing against the back of my stockings with every step. I walked back and forth in front of the full-length mirror, mesmerized by the movement. It changed the way I held myself, the way I walked. The final, most daunting step was makeup. I went to her vanity, a battlefield of powders, creams, and brushes. I had watched her do this 100 times, both on herself and on me. I picked up the blush, my hand shaking. I remembered her telling me to smile, to find the apples of my cheeks. I dusted the soft pink powder on, and the feather-light touch of the brush on my skin somehow evoked a real blush of emotion beneath it, a hot surge of excitement mixed with the icy fear of what I was doing. I stared at the reflection in the mirror. The person looking back was a stranger. The smooth arms, the skirt that flared just so, the hint of color on the cheeks. It was a girl, a pretty, but terrified girl. My heart was racing, a frantic dialogue screaming in my head. What are you doing? This is insane. You're betraying Dad. You're betraying yourself. But another, quieter voice whispered, "Look at her. She's beautiful." It was an alien thought, and yet it felt undeniably true. This reflection, this creation, was beautiful. I heard Mom's footsteps on the stairs. It was now or never. I took a deep breath, went downstairs, and found her in the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of water. I grabbed the teapot. My hands were shaking so badly I was afraid I'd drop it. "Let me get that for you, Mom," I said. My voice came out as a soft, hesitant whisper. She turned, and her eyes widened. Her jaw went slack. She stared at me, at the skirt, the stockings, the blush. She took in the entire picture, and for a terrifying second, I thought she was going to be angry, or worse, laugh at me. Instead, her eyes filled with tears, the same way they had at the dinner table when I first confronted her. But this time, the tears weren't from sorrow or guilt. They were tears of overwhelming, unadulterated joy. I carefully poured her a cup of tea, my movements self-conscious. I handed it to her with a slight dip of my head, a pose I'd seen in a movie. That felt submissive, empowered, yet fragile. She took the cup, her hand trembling as much as mine had been. A single perfect tear rolled down her cheek and splashed onto the counter. "Oh, honey," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "My beautiful girl." Her words, her tearful, absolute acceptance, washed over me like a warm wave. In that moment, the inner turmoil, the guilt, the fear of rejection, it all dissolved. It was the validation I didn't even know I was craving. For the first time, this wasn't something being done to me. It was a choice I had made, a step I had taken all by myself. My mindset, which had been locked in a state of reluctant obligation, had finally, irrevocably, shifted. I was curious. I wanted to see where this path would lead. That moment, the one with the teacup and the tears, changed everything between us. It was like a secret confession had finally been spoken aloud, and the relief was palpable. My mom's styling business was taking off, and she was starting to get noticed by people in the local high society scene. A few weeks after my spontaneous transformation, she landed a major gig, a private style seminar for a group of wealthy women at a country club. It was her chance to make a real name for herself. She was in a panic for days beforehand, planning every detail. Then one evening, she sat me down. There was a nervous energy about her, a hopeful glint in her eye. "Alex," she said, taking my hand, "I have a crazy idea, but it could be a game changer for me, for us." She pitched it to me like a marketing strategy. "These women," she explained, "they've seen it all. They've had stylists from the city. I need a hook, something unforgettable." She paused, taking a deep breath. "I want you to be my model." I stiffened. "Mom, no. At home is one thing, but in public, in front of all those people, what if they recognize me? What if someone from school is there?" "They won't," she insisted, her voice gaining momentum. "We'll be careful. And think of the narrative. Honey, it's pure magic. I'll present you at the end of the seminar, this beautiful young woman you've seen tonight. This is what's possible, because this is my son." Her eyes were shining. "If I can make a teenage boy look this convincingly feminine, imagine the miracles I can perform for them. It's the ultimate before and after. It's my miracle. My first instinct was to say no. The anxiety was a physical thing, a churning sickness in my stomach. The fear of being caught, of being ridiculed, was immense. But then I looked at my mom, at the desperate hope on her face. This wasn't just about her dream of a daughter anymore. This was about her livelihood, her future, and a deeper, more selfish part of me felt a flicker of a thrill. The secret applause I'd given myself in the mirror. What would it be like to get that from a room full of people, to be seen, to be admired, not as Alex, the awkward teenager, but as this other person, this beautiful creation? Hesitantly, I agreed. The day of the event, the transformation was unlike anything we'd done before. This wasn't just a blouse over a t-shirt or a little bit of blush. This was a complete top-to-bottom metamorphosis. It started with a full-body wax. I had to lie on a table in the spare bedroom while a professional esthetician Mom had hired worked on me. The warm wax was spread onto my legs, arms, and even my chest. Then came the ripping sound of the strips being pulled away. It was a sharp, burning sting, followed by a strangely satisfying, silky relief. My skin was left pink and hypersensitive, but incredibly, unbelievably smooth. Next came the foundation garments. Mom produced a piece of shapewear that looked like a medieval torture device. It was a corset-like garment that hooked up the front. As she tightened the laces, it compressed my waist, pushing my stomach in and creating the illusion of curves. It changed my posture, forcing me to stand up straighter, and it made my breathing feel shallow. It was constricting, but it was also transformative. I looked in the mirror and saw a silhouette that wasn't mine. The outfit she'd chosen was sophisticated and clever. It wasn't a dress, which might be too much, but a pair of flowing, wide-legged, cream-colored slacks and a matching silk blouse that tied in a soft bow at the neck. The tailoring was impeccable, designed to create a feminine line. The final touch was the shoes, a pair of low, 2-inch heels. Walking in them was like learning to walk all over again. The rhythmic click-clack on the hardwood floor forced me into a different gait, a graceful sway from the hips that felt both alien and strangely natural. The makeup was a slow, deliberate process, each layer built upon the last. Foundation, concealer, a light dusting of powder. Then came the details. She used eyeliner to create a subtle wing at the corners of my eyes, her hands steady while mine trembled. The precise, delicate strokes felt like she was drawing a new person onto my face. The mascara wand tickled as it brushed against my lashes, lengthening them, making my eyes look bigger, more expressive. When I fluttered them, I could feel the faint brush of the lashes against the skin below my brow. Emotionally, I was a wreck. My anxiety was a roaring fire in my chest. The fear of being exposed, of hearing a snicker from the crowd, was battling with this new, budding thrill of admiration. I felt like an actor about to go on stage for the first time, a heady mix of stage fright and a desperate craving for the spotlight. At the country club, I was introduced as Alexa, Mom's assistant. My job was simple: hand out brochures, hold up swatches of fabric, and generally look elegant. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure everyone could see it beating through the silk of my blouse. But as the event went on, something amazing happened. People smiled at me. They complimented my outfit. An older woman with perfectly coiffed silver hair touched my arm and said, "My dear, you are simply stunning, Evelyn. Your assistant is a walking advertisement for your talent." The compliments were like a drug. Each one chipped away at my anxiety, replacing it with a warm, glowing confidence. I started to relax, to move more naturally. I was glamorous. I was beautiful. No one saw Alex, the shy teenage boy. They saw Alexa, a poised and lovely young woman. My psychology was evolving in real time. I wasn't just playing a part anymore. I was inhabiting it. And as I stood there, bathed in the soft lighting and the admiring glances of the room, a secret, feminine self that I never knew existed began to emerge from the shadows, blinking in the bright, intoxicating light of the spotlight. The country club event was a resounding success. Mom was flooded with calls from potential new clients, women who wanted their own miracle transformation. One of those calls came from a woman named Victoria, a statuesque blonde with a no-nonsense demeanor who had watched my every move at the seminar with an eagle eye. She was one of the wealthiest women in town, and her patronage was a major coup for Mom. Victoria hired Mom for a full wardrobe consultation, and during one of their sessions, She brought me up, your assistant, Alexa, she'd said to Mom. There's a natural poise there, an elegance you can't teach. She's lovely. A week later, Victoria called with a proposal that was so outlandish it felt like something out of a movie. She explained that her son Ethan was painfully shy. He was a junior in high school and the upcoming school formal was looming. He hadn't asked anyone, and Victoria was worried he'd stay home alone. I have an idea, Victoria said, her voice crisp and businesslike over the phone as Mom put her on speaker. I want to hire Alexa to accompany Ethan to the formal. I almost choked on my soda. What? He needs a push, Victoria continued, oblivious to my shock. And frankly, the girls at that school are uninspired. Alexa is sophisticated. She's charming. She would give him confidence. Of course, I would pay her for her time. Think of it as an escort service, but for social grace. Mom was quiet for a moment, and I could see the gears turning in her head. This was it, the ultimate realization of her fantasy. Not just dressing me up for an afternoon, but sending me out into the world on a real date, to a real high school dance, as her daughter. Victoria, I don't know, Mom said, but her tone lacked conviction. Alexa is very private. Nonsense, Victoria said. Well, name your price. And of course, a budget for a dress is a given. After she hung up, the room was silent. The idea was terrifying. This wasn't a controlled environment full of middle-aged women. This was a high school dance, a place full of teenagers, my peers, people who might recognize me. The risk of exposure was astronomical. We can't, I said, my voice shaking. Mom, we just can't. She came over and sat next to me on the sofa. Just think about it, Alex, she said softly. Think about the adventure. And Victoria is a very important client. She saw my hesitation and decided it was time for a prep session, as she called them, that evening. She sat me down at her vanity. This time, it felt different. It wasn't for a client or a presentation. It was just for us. The mood was intimate, quiet. She decided to focus on my lips. A woman's lips are her most expressive feature, she murmured, more to herself than to me. She picked up a tube of deep red lipstick, the color of old wine. Instead of applying it directly, she used a fine-tipped brush. Look up, she commanded gently. The process was incredibly slow, almost sensual. Her fingers brushed against my chin to steady my face. The tip of the brush traced the outline of my Cupid's bow with painstaking precision. The intimacy of the moment was palpable. It felt nurturing, like a mother caring for her child. But it was also charged with a different kind of energy, something that stirred a strange warmth in my chest that was entirely new and confusing. It wasn't explicitly romantic, but it was an intimacy that went beyond a simple mother-son bond. After she filled in the color, she had me press my lips together on a tissue. Perfect, she whispered. Her face close to mine, I stared at my reflection. The red lips were bold, dramatic. They transformed my face completely. Now for the dress, she said, a new excitement in her voice. She pulled a dress from her closet that a client had decided against. It was a simple black cocktail dress, sleeveless and fitted. That ended just above the knee. Just to get a feel for it, she said. I slipped it on in her bathroom. The zipper ran up the entire length of the back. As I reached behind me and pulled it up, the slow, steady glide of the metal teeth closing felt like a vulnerable, thrilling secret. The fabric hugged my body, the shapewear underneath creating a figure I barely recognized. I walked out and stood before her. She circled me slowly, her expression one of deep satisfaction. It's a little plain, she mused. For the formal, we'll need something spectacular, but this shows the potential. The inner conflict was raging inside me. My mind screamed with 1,000 reasons why this was a bad idea. The dread of exposure a cold knot in my stomach, but my heart was pounding with a different emotion, a wild, reckless excitement. The adventure of it all, the ultimate test of our creation. I looked at the beautiful, confident girl in the mirror with her bold red lips, and then I looked at my mother, whose face was shining with a familiar, hopeful joy. Her affirming words, her belief in Alexa, tipped the scales. Okay, I heard myself say, the word coming out as a breathless whisper. I'll do it, doll. My acceptance deepened, hardening from a curious exploration into a committed journey. I was going to the formal as a girl. The decision to go to the formal with Ethan hung over me for the next 2 weeks. At school, I felt like I was living a double life, a spy behind enemy lines. I was hyper-aware of everything. I'd catch my reflection in a window and scrutinize my face. Could anyone tell? Could they see the ghost of Alexa in Alex's features? Mom had been meticulous. She'd insisted on keeping my eyebrows perfectly shaped. A subtle change that most people wouldn't consciously notice, but that softened my whole expression. After the Miracle Model event, I'd also gotten careless and forgotten to scrub off every last trace of the waterproof mascara she'd used. I thought I'd gotten it all, but I was wrong. It was Sophia who noticed. Sophia was in my English and history classes. She was different from the other girls. She had short, spiky hair that she sometimes dyed blue or purple, wore vintage band t-shirts, and wasn't part of any particular clique. She was quiet but had this incredibly observant, intelligent look in her eyes. She cornered me by my locker after school one day. My heart leaped into my throat. I was expecting a confrontation, maybe blackmail. "Hey, Alex," she said, her voice low. "Hey, Sophia," I mumbled, fumbling with my combination lock. "Can I ask you something kind of weird?" This is it. I thought, I'm busted. Sure. She leaned in a little closer, and I could smell the faint scent of cinnamon gum. "Are you wearing mascara?" she whispered. "And who does your eyebrows? They're literally perfect." My face went hot. I was speechless. I just stared at her, my mind racing for a plausible lie, an allergic reaction, a dare. But instead of the malicious grin I expected, her expression was one of genuine, open curiosity. There was no judgment in her eyes. Seeing my panic, she held up her hands. "Whoa, chill," she said with a small smile. "I'm not going to out you or anything. I'm into makeup and stuff. I notice things. And honestly, it looks good." The relief that washed over me was so intense it almost made my knees buckle. It's my mom," I stammered. "She's a stylist. She practices on me sometimes." It was a half-truth, but it was the best I could come up with. Sophia just nodded, as if this was the most normal explanation in the world. "Cool, well, tell her she has skills." She paused, then a playful look entered her eyes. "You know, if you ever want to try something a little more fun than just basic mascara, let me know." That brief interaction cracked open a window in the lonely, secret world I was living in. I had an ally, someone who knew, or at least suspected, and didn't think I was a freak. A few days later, I saw her sitting alone in a hidden corner of the school courtyard, a little alcove behind the gymnasium that no one ever used. I took a chance. I walked over and sat down next to her on the concrete bench. "Hey," I said. "Hey yourself," she replied, not looking up from the book she was reading. We sat in silence for a minute, and I was just about to lose my nerve and leave when she closed her book and turned to me. "So," she said, "your mom, the stylist, is that why you always look so put together?" I confessed a little more of the truth. I told her about my mom's business and how I was her canvas. I left out the part about the dresses and the stockings, and I definitely didn't mention the formal. But I told her enough. She listened intently, a small, knowing smile on her face. "You know," she said when I was done. "Gender is kind of a construct anyway. It's all just performance." I had no idea what she meant, but it sounded profound. Then she did something that made my heart stop. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small tube of lip gloss. It was shimmery and pink. "Want to try?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with mischief. I was frozen. We were at school. Anyone could walk by, but we were hidden, and the look on her face was so open and friendly before I could answer. She'd uncapped it. "Just a little," she said, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. She shuffled closer on the bench, and her knee brushed against mine. She gently tilted my chin up with her finger and dabbed the gloss onto my bottom lip. Her touch was incredibly gentle, almost teasing. I could feel the heat radiating from her fingertips. My face flushed, a real honest-to-God blush that had nothing to do with makeup. She pulled back and admired her work. "See cute." The gloss was sticky and sweet, and I was intensely aware of it. We just sat there for a second, the air charged with a strange, new energy. It was the beginning of a light, playful flirtation, a silent understanding that passed between us. I finally had someone I could confide in, even if it was just through these small, secret gestures. My inner turmoil, the constant feeling of being a freakish secret, began to ease. My psychology shifted from one of scared isolation to a tentative, hopeful alliance. I wasn't entirely alone in this anymore. With the formal looming, the mission to find the perfect dress became Mom's #1 priority. "We can't use something off my rack," she declared one evening, pacing the living room. "This needs to be special. It needs to be Alexa's dress. We have to go shopping." My blood ran cold. Shopping like in a real store, Mom? No way. What if I see someone I know? "We'll go to that boutique downtown, the fancy one. No teenagers will be in there," she reasoned. "And besides," she added with a sly smile, "it's time for a proper fitting. For foundation garments, it's an essential part of the process." I knew it was pointless to argue, so the following Saturday, we went. I wore a baggy hoodie and a baseball cap pulled down low, my heart pounding with every step I took from the car to the store's entrance. The boutique was exactly as she described it: quiet, elegant, and filled with clothes that cost more than my entire video game collection. A chic, older woman with sharp, kind eyes greeted us. She was the owner, a friend of one of Mom's clients. Mom had called ahead. "Evelyn, so good to see you." The woman, whose name was Diane, said warmly. Then she looked at me, taking in my slouchy, boyish disguise. Her gaze was knowing, not judgmental. "And this must be your lovely mom model. Welcome, dear. We have a private dressing room all ready for you." The outing was that simple, that painless. Diane was a professional. She'd seen it all. In her eyes, I wasn't a boy in a dress shop. I was a client in need of an outfit. Diane led us to a large, plushly carpeted dressing room with a 3-way mirror. "I've pulled a few options based on your mother's notes," she said. "But first, let's get the foundations right." She returned with a selection of bras and panties that made my face burn. This was a new level of mortification. Trying things on with my mom was one thing. Having a stranger see me was another. But Diane was all business. "Let's start with this," she said, handing me a bra. It was a simple, seamless t-shirt bra with light padding. The sensation of putting it on was bizarre. The band was snug around my ribs, and the padded cups cupped my flat chest, creating a subtle but definite swell under my hoodie. It made me stand up straighter, my shoulders automatically pulling back. Next came the panties. They were a silky microfiber material with a delicate lace trim at the waistband. They were infinitely more comfortable than the scratchy lace things I'd imagined, and the fabric felt soft and cool against my skin, a secret whisper of femininity hidden under my jeans. Then, Diane brought in the dresses. The first was a deep navy blue, with a tight body-hugging silhouette. As I zipped it up and looked in the 3-way mirror, I felt a jolt of shock. The dress, combined with the foundation garments, created a figure I didn't recognize as my own. It hugged my form in a way that left nothing to the imagination, amplifying the sensation of total exposure. My hips looked wider, my waist narrower. I looked curvy. "A little too severe, I think," Mom said critically. The next was a soft, blush pink chiffon dress with a flowing skirt. The moment I put it on, my entire mood changed. Where the blue dress felt bold and scary, this one felt soft and romantic. When I spun, the skirt billowed around me, a weightless cloud of fabric. My initial gut-wrenching mortification was slowly, dress by dress, fading away. It was being replaced by a giddy, almost illicit joy. I looked at the elegant girl staring back at me from the mirrors, and I couldn't help but smile. Diane, seeing my reaction, smiled too. "This is always the best part of my job," she said softly. "Seeing someone find the dress that lets them see how beautiful they really are." As we were trying on the third option, a shimmering silver gown, Diane brought over a tray of perfume samples. "A scent can complete a look," she explained. She spritzed one onto a paper strip and waved it under my nose. It was a complex floral scent. She sprayed another. This one was lighter, smelling of citrus and vanilla. I found myself leaning into the scent, the fragrance lingering in the air, creating an invisible cloak of allure. In my mind, that scent became intrinsically linked with the feeling of elegance, of femininity. We decided on the blush pink dress. As I changed back into my boy clothes, the baggy hoodie and jeans felt like a costume. The soft fabric of the bra and panties against my skin was a secret reminder of the girl in the mirror. My mindset was shifting again. This was no longer just about helping my mom or the thrill of a secret. This was becoming fun. The lines I had drawn for myself, the rigid definitions of boy and girl, were blurring into a beautiful, exciting, and terrifying new picture. Even though we'd found the perfect dress, Mom deemed it too bold for a first real outing. "We need to refine the look," she announced a few nights later. "The dress is the star, but the supporting cast is just as important. We need to practice the entire ritual from start to finish, so it feels like second nature on the big night." This wasn't about just trying on clothes anymore. This was about perfecting the art of transformation. The process became more intense, more detailed, a ritual we performed in the sanctuary of her master bathroom. It started with my legs. "No stockings this time," she said. "A formal requires a flawless, natural look." She handed me a brand new razor and a can of moisturizing shaving gel. I'd shaved my arms on my own, but this felt more significant, in the shower. I carefully glided the cool razor up my calves and over my knees, the blade moving with a whisper-soft sound. The sensation was incredible. When I stepped out and toweled off, my legs were hypersensitive to the air, to the touch of the towel, to everything. They felt new. Then she handed me a pair of sheer, nude pantyhose. "These will even out the skin tone and give you a polished finish," she explained. The hosiery was different from the stockings I'd worn before. They sheathed my legs in a sheer layer of silk, a compressive yet liberating feeling that made my muscles feel taut and ready. They came all the way up to my waist, smoothing everything out. Next came a girdle. It wasn't the corset-like contraption from the country club event. This was a more modern, lightweight version, but its effect was just as profound. It cinched my waist and smoothed over my hips, creating a gentle feminine curve. Walking in it felt different. It subtly altered my gait, forcing a more deliberate, rolling motion from my hips. It was the kind of undergarment that dictated how you moved. With the foundations in place, I slipped on the pink dress. It felt even better than it had in the store. With my legs smooth and sheathed in silk, the flowing chiffon skirt felt like a dream against my skin. As Mom began to work on my makeup, my mind was a battlefield. The inner voices were having a fierce debate. "This feels so right," one whispered. "You're a boy. This is a costume. Don't forget that." The other retorted, but the ritual itself was calming. The methodical application of foundation, the careful sweep of an eyeshadow brush, the precise line of the eyeliner, it was all so focused, so deliberate, that it silenced the noise in my head. A strange sense of peace settled over me, mixed with a low thrum of arousal. This process, this transformation, felt more authentic than the baggy jeans and hoodies I wore every day. My phone buzzed on the vanity. It was a text from Sophia. "Thinking about the formal find a hot date yet?" My fingers trembled as I typed back. "Something like that. It's complicated." I decided to take a risk. I snapped a quick, discreet photo, just the neckline of the pink dress against my smooth skin and the hint of the makeup around my eyes. I sent it to her with the caption "dress rehearsal." I held my breath. I had just revealed my biggest secret. For a full minute, there was no reply. I was convinced I had scared her off, that she thought I was a total weirdo. Then, my phone buzzed again. "OMG, Alex, that color is amazing on you. You look gorgeous." Her enthusiastic, emoji-filled response was like a shot of pure validation. Another text followed immediately. "Seriously, who is she? Are you going with her spill?" The light flirtation was intoxicating. She thought the picture was of my date. The dramatic irony was thick enough to cut with a knife. "It's a secret," I texted back, a playful smile on my face. "You'll have to wait and see." Her final reply made my heart do a little flip-flop. "Well, whoever she is, she's lucky. You have great taste." I looked at myself in the mirror, at the soft pink dress, the flawless makeup, the girl with the secret smile. Sophia's words, Her easy acceptance and playful compliments made me feel desired, admired. It wasn't just my mom's dream anymore. It wasn't just a game. It was becoming a part of me, a part that felt beautiful, and for the first time, a part that I wasn't entirely ashamed of. The success of the country club event had ripples I couldn't have predicted. A few days after my dress rehearsal with Mom, she received an email from one of the women who had been in attendance. This woman was a senior marketing executive for a luxury cosmetics and fashion brand, a huge international company. She had been, in her words, utterly captivated by Mom's presentation and her miracle model. She wanted a meeting. The meeting took place in a sleek, minimalist downtown office that smelled like expensive perfume and ambition. I was there as Alexa, dressed in a chic, conservative navy dress, my hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. The executive, a sharp woman named Ms. Dubois, got straight to the point. "Your story is compelling, Evelyn," she said, her eyes fixed on Mom but her attention clearly on me. "But what's more compelling is the product." She gestured toward me. "The authenticity of the transformation is remarkable." She then laid out a proposal that was so far beyond anything I could have imagined that it felt like a scene from a fever dream. The brand was launching a new high-concept campaign focused on the power of transformation. They wanted to feature a series of before and after stories, and they wanted me to be the face of the campaign. The offer was staggering: a multi-year modeling contract, magazine spreads, video commercials, the kind of money that would change our lives completely. But there was a catch, a huge one. For the campaign to have maximum impact over the long term, Ms. Dubois explained, her voice carefully neutral, we would need to ensure a certain consistency in our model's appearance. Specifically, we'd want to maintain the androgynous quality of the before state, prevent the full onset of masculine puberty. She said it so clinically, but I knew exactly what she meant. She slid a brochure across the polished mahogany table. It was for a private medical clinic. The brochure was full of terms like puberty blockers and hormone antagonists. "The company would, of course, cover all medical consultations and expenses," she added smoothly. "It's standard practice for maintaining a specific look in long-term campaigns." I felt the air leave my lungs. This wasn't about makeup and dresses anymore. This was about medically altering my body. This was about choosing a path that would fundamentally change who I was, or who I was supposed to become. It was a crossroads, a terrifying, monumental decision laid out on a table in front of me. Mom was silent, her face unreadable. This went far beyond her dream of a daughter. This was a different territory altogether, one with real, permanent consequences. To help us visualize the potential, Ms. Dubois had arranged for a demo disguise with one of the brand's top makeup artists. I was whisked away to an in-house studio. The transformation was on a whole other level. They started with a full wig, a cascade of honey blonde hair that felt heavy and strange on my head. They applied acrylic nails, long and almond-shaped. That made my hands feel foreign and clumsy. The clicking sound they made against the counter was a constant, distracting reminder of their presence. The contouring was the most dramatic part. The artist used an array of creams and powders to literally reshape my face, creating the illusion of higher cheekbones, a slimmer nose, and a more delicate jawline. The physical sensations were overwhelming: the weight of the wig, the tightness of my skin from the makeup, the way the false eyelashes brushed against my vision every time I blinked. I felt like a sculpture being chiseled into a new form. When they were done, I looked in the mirror and saw a complete stranger. It wasn't Alexa, the girl Mom and I had created. This was a supermodel, a flawless, intimidatingly beautiful woman. It was incredible. It was terrifying. Looking at that stranger in the mirror, my psychology shifted once more. I had been passively swept along by my mom's dream, then by a hesitant curiosity, and then by the thrill of acceptance. But this offer forced me to be proactive. This was no longer something that was happening to me. It was a choice that was being presented for me. Did I want this? Could I trade a normal future, the future my father would have expected for me, for this extraordinary, glamorous, and profoundly strange alternative, the freedom to explore this part of myself? To be celebrated for it was being offered to me, but at a price. It was a price that would be paid not just in secret dress-up sessions, but in clinics and prescriptions. It was a choice between conforming to the world's norms or transforming myself to fit a new one. staring at the beautiful stranger in the mirror. For the first time, I didn't have an answer. The weight of the modeling offer and the decision about hormone blockers pressed down on me constantly. It was too big to process alone. The one person I could even begin to talk to about it was Sophia. Our secret friendship had deepened through a steady stream of texts and quiet conversations in our corner of the courtyard. Meanwhile, Mom had another styling event, a charity gala this time. She insisted I come along as Alexa, arguing that it was good practice for the formal. And besides, she said, I need my good luck charm. What I didn't know was that Sophia's family were patrons of the charity, and she was going to be there. I saw her across the ballroom. I was in a simple but elegant emerald green dress, my hair styled in soft waves. She was in a sharp, tailored black suit with a lacy camisole underneath, looking incredibly cool and confident. Our eyes met, and I saw a flicker of confusion, then dawning recognition, and finally, a slow, brilliant smile spread across her face. My heart did a backflip. She made her way over to me through the crowd. Wow, she said, her voice a low murmur. The secret is even more stunning in person. I should have known. You're not weirded out, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She just laughed, a genuine warm sound. Alex, please, I told you, it's all performance. And your performance, it's spectacular. She reached out and tucked a stray wave of my hair behind my ear, her fingers lingering for a second on my cheek. I'll keep your secret, she mouthed, before her parents called her over. That small moment of acceptance, in public, while I was fully transformed, felt more profound than anything else. She saw both sides of me, Alex and Alexa, and she wasn't just okay with it, she seemed to genuinely admire it. After the gala, the three of us, Mom, Sophia, and I ended up back at my house. Sophia had told her parents she was staying over at a friend's, a little white lie that felt charged with conspiracy. We sat in Mom's studio, the energy in the room buzzing with post-event excitement. Okay, you have to show me how you did that eyeliner, Sophia said to my mom. And soon, it turned into an impromptu makeup session, but this time, it was a shared experience. Sophia showed my mom a technique for blending eyeshadow she'd learned from an online tutorial. Mom showed Sophia how to properly contour. I just sat there, watching them, feeling a sense of belonging that was completely new. Then, Sophia turned to me. My turn, she said, picking up an eyeshadow palette. She sat on the stool in front of me, her knees almost touching mine. Close your eyes. Her fingers were incredibly soft as she brushed a shimmery gold powder across my eyelids. Her touch was gentle, deliberate, and every point of contact sent a little jolt of electricity through me. The air was thick with the scent of makeup and the unspoken connection between us. When she was done, I opened my eyes. We were inches apart, so close I could see the flecks of green in her brown eyes. There, she whispered, perfect. The world seemed to slow down in that moment, surrounded by the tools of my transformation, with my mom humming softly as she cleaned her brushes in the background. Sophia leaned in. Her lips were soft, tasting faintly of the cherry soda she'd been drinking. The kiss was gentle, hesitant at first, and then it deepened, a tender, electric confirmation of everything that had been building between us. It wasn't a boy kissing a girl, or a girl kissing a girl. It was just us, two people connecting, seeing each other for who they really were. When we pulled apart, my face was flushed and my heart was racing. That kiss, so simple and so pure, solidified everything for me. It wasn't about a fantasy or a performance anymore. This duality, this ability to be both Alex and Alexa, was a real, essential part of me. And for the first time, I felt like someone else could see that, accept it, and even be attracted to it. It was the final piece of the puzzle, the one that made me feel whole. The day of the formal arrived. A sun-drenched Saturday that felt charged with nervous energy. This was the grand premiere, the culmination of all the rehearsals, secrets, and discoveries. The transformation process began in the early afternoon, a full-scale operation that took over my entire house. And this time, I had a new assistant, Sophia. She arrived with a bag full of her own makeup and a huge, encouraging smile. Her presence changed the dynamic completely. What used to be an intimate, sometimes tense, ritual between my mother and me became a fun, collaborative, an almost celebratory event. They worked on me like a precious piece of art, their chatter and laughter filling the room. The physical sensations were a symphony of femininity. It started with a long, scented bath. Then came the manicure. Sophia carefully filed my nails into a soft, rounded shape and then painted them a pale, shimmery pink to match my dress. The cool polish felt strange as it dried on my nails, and I had to hold my hands out awkwardly, careful not to smudge her handiwork. Mom took charge of the foundations, the smooth glide of the freshly shaven razor, the whisper of the pantyhose being pulled up my legs, the secure, shaping pressure of the girdle. These were all familiar sensations now, steps in a well-known dance. The most significant addition was the breast forms. They were made of soft, pliable silicone that warmed to my body temperature. Mom helped me slide them into the padded pockets of a special bra. They had a surprising weight to them, a warm, subtle pressure against my chest that made my posture change once again, my shoulders naturally softening. Finally, it was time for the dress. The blush pink chiffon felt like a cloud as they slipped it over my head. As Mom zipped it up, the luxurious fabric cascaded around me. I looked in the full-length mirror, and for the first time, there was no doubt, no inner conflict, just a soaring, unadulterated euphoria. The girl looking back at me was beautiful, and she was me, Alexa. Sophia did my makeup, her touch light and confident. Her presence was a calming balm to my jangling nerves. When she was done, she held up a hand mirror. "See," she whispered, "perfect." When Ethan arrived, he was a bundle of nerves, a tall, gangly kid who seemed terrified of his own shadow. But when he saw me, his eyes widened, not with suspicion, but with genuine admiration. "Wow," he stammered, "you look amazing." The formal itself was a surreal dream. The gym was decorated beyond recognition. The music was loud, and the air was thick with perfume and teenage awkwardness. I danced with Ethan, who turned out to be sweet and funny once he relaxed. A few times, I caught people from my school staring, and my heart would seize with panic. But their looks were curious, not accusatory. They were just looking at the new girl, the pretty date Ethan had brought. The most poignant moment of the night happened in a quiet hallway near the bathrooms. Ethan was feeling self-conscious, convinced everyone was staring at him. He was rubbing his lips nervously. "I feel so plain next to you," he mumbled. On an impulse, I reached into my small clutch purse and pulled out the shimmery lip gloss Sophia had used on me. "Here," I said softly. I took the wand and dabbed a tiny, almost invisible amount onto his lips. A little shine never hurt anyone. He looked at me, surprised, and then a small, grateful smile touched his lips. It was a private, tender moment, not one of romance, but of shared secrets and empathy. I was passing on a little piece of the confidence that had been given to me. After the formal, my path felt clearer. The world hadn't ended. I hadn't been exposed. In fact, I had thrived. The following week, I sat down with my mom and told her my decision. I wanted to take the meeting with the clinic. I wanted to explore the option of the blockers. It wasn't for the modeling contract. Not really. It was for me. It was a way to give myself time, to keep the door open to becoming the person I was just beginning to discover. At the clinic, a place of soft lighting and quiet professionalism, I met other kids like me in the waiting room. I struck up a conversation with someone named Jamie, who had a sharp wit and kind eyes. We talked about video games and art and the strange, confusing, and wonderful journey of finding yourself for the first time. I was meeting kindred spirits. I wasn't an anomaly. My story isn't over. In many ways, it feels like it's just beginning. My mom's dream of a daughter has evolved into something far more complex and beautiful, our shared journey of mutual fulfillment. I am still Alex, but now I am also Alexa. I live in a world of duality, stepping into her elegance and confidence when it feels right. The future isn't a straight line. It's an open road, full of possibilities, and for the first time in my life, I'm not afraid to see where it leads. I'm stepping into it with open eyes, with a supportive mother, a wonderful friend, and a newfound acceptance of every part of myself.